it called public domain. In short, you write it down, you already own it. But if you go and register it with Kekobo, it increases your charge in case you need litigation, so you have more evidence of the registration. So the entire script, once you've written it, you already have the copyright.
Thank you very much. June, first and foremost, karibu sana. Karibu sana. Number two, for the interest of our audience, you just introduce yourself and then I will shoot a question at you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. My name is June Gashui. My apologies. I've run out of a board meeting to join you. I told them this was important and I had committed, so thank you for your indulgence. So my name is June Gashui. I'm a performing artist, an intellectual property lawyer and practitioner. And I sing, I act, and I'm a copyright holder as well and owner. So this is the space I deal with on a daily basis from both my passion and my profession. And I'm happy we're continuing to have this conversation. And I think for me, IP has, especially over the last decade or so, has formed a huge part of my revenue, from which I earn a living. So I can confirm to you that it is actually possible to do so, but it means that we have to start because we chose to be in this space, not just because we were talented, but it's a decision we made to make a living out of this particular aspect of our gifts. So I think it's important that we educate ourselves, and I applaud you for being here to be part of this conversation.
Thank you, June. You have is this a workshop or a seminar? This is a workshop.
It's a discussion.
This is a discussion.
Yes.
You have the topic for today's discussion?
Yeah, I saw it somewhere.
Because I want to throw you a question.
Okay.
Even as we are looking at, and this is the question that we want to have, we are trying to juxtapose. There's that thing they told us in literature, juxtaposing is when you put two things together and you try to look at what are the differences and what are the similarities. If we can pick a script like Black Panther and we pick Nairobi Half-Life, but I want us to limit ourselves only to the extent of characters and how characters are boosted. Yes? What do you think, as a practitioner of intellectual property law, the Black Panther production team got right that a team like Nairobi Half-Life missed?
I struggle to even compare the two, to be honest, okay. Just because there are such different storylines and art forms, in the sense that you can define or describe a character in various ways. There are physical appearance, there's aspects of costume that we look at, there's aspects of language and characteristics when we look at character development, when we're developing who the person is. I think language is another factor, and I don't know that I can compare in terms of right or wrong. I think both creative journeys delivered, in terms of their characters, delivered what was needed for the story to be moved along. Okay. If you had very posh speaking characters in Nairobi Half-Life, I don't think it would have had the same grit, because it was telling a story of another aspect of what this city's reality is. Whereas, what's this other one called? T'Challa is called what? Wakanda people, Black Panther, was about maybe some element of culture and aspirational portrayal of what the motherland offers, and actually something that I would say even the elders of various communities would say is truthful in its portrayal, in terms of, we had elders, we had people who'd go and pray at a mountain. There's people who have argued that this was picked directly from their own historical history. So I struggle to put the two, to juxtapose, as you said, the two next to each other and compare one character for the other. I would look more at, did it deliver what it was meant to do? Did the story become more believable? Was it told in a certain way? And were there aspects of those characters that then would be able to be protected so that nobody else can then replicate a T'Challa, for example, character versus a character in Nairobi Half-Life.
Sure.
I think maybe that was done a bit more in Black Panther, because a goon in a gang in Nairobi or in Tanzania or in the States would kind of look the same as all the gang members did, but maybe there were aspects of their language, of the way they communicated or they portrayed themselves in terms of their visual appearance that could have been protected, I think, for Nairobi Half-Life specifically.
Thank you very much. Because, and I want you, Alex, to touch on it. Because, June, we are not here in the interest of tearing one another down. This is purely illustration. And what we are trying to look at is, you've singled out that in Black Panther, there are things that coming out like physical locality and costume and how a cast presents itself. And that one, actually, we connect with it. In so to speak, that one seeks to reinforce that character, even in connecting with the audience. And Alex, what are we missing, especially as June has laid this platform, that those people in the West, especially Hollywood, they are very good at exploiting the surrounding of a character so that at the end of the day, we can connect with that character. What are we missing that has intellectual property component? So that even as that guy goes out today, he will say, oh, so even as I write, these are the components that if I just harness in my writing, then my character can come out.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. The first thing I want to say is pick on what you said, what makes that connect with the audiences. And the first thing that comes to mind when I think of Black Panther and I connect to Nairobi Half-Life is the storyline. Look at a storyline where the black is the hero. You know, if you look at all the other stories, what happens, they are depicted, maybe they are wanaonewa huruma, they are given a role. But here, it's a complete reversal. The heroes and the people who are ahead, even when they go to the UN. So first of all, the storyline changes, not changes the narrative, actually totally transforms the narrative. It's like the other way. So already you connect yourself, now you are the hero. That's first of all, the storyline comes in on that. The second thing is you also find the effects, which are now, this is not the character, but where the character is. The character's role is augmented by very powerful effects and graphics and whatever you want to call them, and that in themselves add a lot to the weight and the impact of the movie. Now, what I would also want to say as a way of a by the way is that the character in any movie, whether it's also in a novel, also in a film or any other role or in music, the character has different rights than the underlying production. Sure. So the Black Panther, the characters you see there, their rights are additional to what the producer of that film had. So you also need to know that those are different rights which are added, which are evaluated separately. There are technical ways of doing it. Those are the things that at the top of my head strike and make it more striking and more unforgettable, as opposed to the wonderful film by Tosh of Nairobi Half-Life.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And get this. Intellectual property, someone had defined here that is the creation of the human mind. That is one bit of intellectual property. Intellectual property in its fullness is the creation of a human mind with an interest of commercialization. So whatever you can create but you cannot commercialize, that is not intellectual property. For instance, if I'm thinking of getting away with my neighbor's wife, that is a creation of my mind. Sawa? I go and I execute the plan of moving with my neighbor's wife.
Can't claim copyright.
That does not fall as an intellectual property. But if I create that and I convert that into a script, that script then becomes intellectual property. Tumesikiza mpaka hapo? Because the challenge yenye tuko nao hapa hivi ni, how do we create characters that we can create markets out of?
What is the crime of?
How do you create, as a writer, how do you compose a character, and what deliberate things do you put in this character, even in the formation of this character, that some other markets can come out of it? I love Game of Thrones. And in a Game of Thrones, there's this gentleman called Littlefinger. Have you guys come across Littlefinger? And they're always with this guy called Lord something. And those guys, even the way they appear, and Hollywood does that deliberately. Why? Because they are creating markets through every character that they show, even in their works. And the beautiful thing that Alex amesema hapo ni, when we are looking at characters, we are not only restricting character only to film. We have character in music. We have character in poems. We have character, like that other one, machismo. That's a character. Yes? What did, for instance, what has Boondocks, the cartoon, what has Boondocks gotten right that machismo is yet to unlock? That is what we want to explore. Mpaka hapo tumeelewa? So that musisikia, oh, these are just lawyers who are having some good... No. So, yes, Alex.
Yeah, just to add on to what the moderator has said, also be aware that there are two types of characters.
Thank you.
Yeah, there are fictional characters and there are graphic characters. So like Mickey Mouse is a graphic character, and then a person appearing in a movie, that's a fictional character. It could be real playing his role, but that's a different type of a character. And so then we also know there's a distinction between these characters.
Thank you very much, Alex. I'm back to you, Madam KFC, because you're the one from the host. Us guys are just guests. Madam KFC, having understood even what Alex has told us, because actually all of the characters largely come from fiction. Though there are certain characters that we can develop from, I can observe June for a while, and I can come up with a story just through observing June. So that one is inspired by June and our interaction with June. But that notwithstanding, whichever character someone picks, yes? And we want to, because the question here is, and actually the subject matter is, how can we use intellectual property to boost character? Boost means either invisibility or boost mean in the economic value of that character. Let me ask us this question. Yes? Us guys who are writing a scripts here, have you ever valued your script that this script could be valued X? Have we? Have we? Do we even value scripts in Kenya? How is it that in the developed world, when they are going into their balance sheets, they can say this script is worth X amount? What do they factor that most of us we have not factored? And I understand that is an entire conversation that touches on an entire ecosystem, because we equally need to factor in what are the economies of scale even in our own scripts. Do we have economies of scale in our scripts? Can I value a script that if I study a lot of scripts, I am a writer myself, and when you look at a script like Matrix, the entire Matrix, they say the script was worth, even when they were just looking at Matrix, it was worth $1.8 billion US. The three Matrix. How is it that those people can quantify that? What are the segments that they are looking at that we can generate from that? That even as you go out of here today, we can have informed decisions, even as we go through our characters. Whosoever has watched Prison Break, T-Bag, yes? In what universe would you expect T-Bag to be a good guy? In what universe? Is there? Actually, all the works I've seen from that guy, the works that he has done subsequent to Prison Break, that guy, and this is the conversation that I wanted us also to have, the point of a character as me as an individual, how I am branding myself, yes, as an individual, even as you appear for auditions. There are people that to get audition, you'll appear for every audition. Cindy, there are people that even my own demeanor alone restricts what auditions to appear. Does it make sense? Because we are trying to look at characters, and we are looking at characters at two levels. We are looking at characters from the one that is scripted. And we are looking as characters, as me as an individual, what are the different features, what are the different aspects of my own self that I can actually reinforce that boosts me as a character? Does it make sense? Does it make sense?
It does.
Yes.
Okay, so my thoughts when it comes to characters, I believe when creatives are coming up and you come up with the script, I believe it requires a lot of thinking through. It requires a lot of thinking through because when I come up with this character, what impact do I want to make with this character? What market am I targeting? And how do I want this character to be shown? Or to what should be the outcome of this character? And if you look at movies such as, if you go back to Black Panther, they thought through these characters such that for the Black Panther, it's something the audience can connect with. The superhero, it's something you can easily connect with, and it was also impactful. But then that means that when we are coming with the characters, just look at all the aspects that revolve around that character to be able to just come up with an impact with it. So that locally, when I think of our own local characters, I can look at Papa Sirandula, for example, with his program. What was the thinking about it, and what was the idea? What impact did the creative have in mind when coming up with that program, or even just Inspector Mwala? So for the characters, it requires a lot of thinking, and then just looking at all the factors in the market. How do I want this character sold so that it can have impact, maybe economically? It can sell even just with the character alone. How will it identify with the community or the audience? Yeah.
Thank you. June?
I just wanted to add, I think one of the aspects of, let me call it pre-existing IP also, because a lot of the properties we've mentioned were developed from an original literary work, for example. So even Black Panther is in a series of comic books, yeah? So there's been, I want to call it a tried and tested period of time where one has already been able to say, I would imagine the producers of that movie said, guys, the way they reacted to the comic book and these characters and how much they've bought in terms of merchandise is almost like a guaranteed win that we can invest in making this movie, because you have a track record of popularity. Same with Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, all of these other ones. And I think internally for us, I'm happy you've mentioned Papa Shirandula or Inspector Mwala or even other characters who have become so, whether they've been on radio or on TV, they've become, like we see the person, you don't even call them by their government of Kenya names. They've become that character, okay? And I think the magic portion is all about what is relatable to the audience. Exactly. We have movies here of foreign languages that we relate to because the story is relatable. It's not about whether it's French or it's English or it's German or it's Portuguese or any other language that we may not have as our first language. But when we watch or read the story, we can relate to it. Like, I know what this guy is going through, with what this person or this family or this character is going through. And I think the genius in each of these people, to the point where the character's name is the name of the show, every one of us can relate to an Askari and a story. Yes? Don't we all have one Askari? You're just like, gosh, this guy, you see him every day, he opens the gate for you, he has stories for you, he has gossip for you, and that is what has built for us to be able to build that character, for it to have the kind of notoriety that it needs to do. The question then I would ask is, how do we make that a transferable trait that is understood in a neighboring country that maybe does not have, yeah? Earlier, Alex used the word superhero. Sure. It doesn't matter which country we are from. We like people who are heroes. In fact, if we could have a corruption-fighting superhero in Kenya, that would be the guy who would be our T'Challa. He would be our Black Panther. Here, given what Kenya is currently, going through. And I think that relatability is really, really important when creatives are trying to think of a story that would sell, not just from an animation or a comic book or an actual fully published manuscript as a book, which then becomes a screenplay, which then becomes a movie or anything else. So I think it's important to also look at already existing IP, even traditionally. In each of we have 47 counties, but we have over 44 different tribes here. We have this conversation in music all the time. Why are we not taking music that has been there since the 60s or 70s from our forefathers and reinterpreting them for our generation today? What does that do? On a cultural level, it maintains our history throughout, so we don't lose, especially what was maybe oral history that was passed on from grandmothers at firesides, but we take that Mwanawamberi song, for example, from the Luya community and do more with it, so in 2060 it's still there as a rap, for example. And that's already existing IP that we have access to as Kenyans, and it also is cultural heritage that we can continue, but it is tried and tested. Sure. Somebody did the work for us. Today you go to a wedding, if that song is played, even if you were born 10 years ago, you have heard it before. So what is making us not benefit or taking advantage of what is already in our pool of valuable cultural heritage and IP?
Sure.
Yeah.
That's a very brilliant point. And you wanted to mention something, and then Tauliza one question,
yes,
and then I will attract only 3 questions. Hallelujah. I will only, in the interest of time, I will only attract 3-4 questions. Pardon? Oh, you can even juxtapose your own questions.
Yes. So thank you. I think that's a very nice point you have raised, but some while back even Kenyans had created a fictional character that was very successful, who was fighting that, whether maybe online. This was online though. What was the name of that character? Mark Mende. Yes, you see, if they have actually copyrighted Mark Mende, that's a good example of the superhero at the local context. I think what one needs to do, because you are people involved in films, is to ask yourself, what unique personality are you creating in that character? Why are certain actors costly or in high demand? Because of the kind of personality and brand they have established. Because I know you know actors and you're trying to get some and you want to play the role the public is aware. Then you probably got to ask yourself, what investment are you willing to put into the character building? Because then it just doesn't happen just like that. There has to be investment in character. And to show what I mean by this is that I would also refer you to just check online. Mickey Mouse came into Disney and became the lovable mouse, earned them billions of dollars. So they have been protecting that mouse for a long time. You just need to check online on a law, so-called Mickey Mouse Protection Act, and you see how much money Disney has spent to protect that character called Mickey Mouse from being used by anybody else.
Let me ask.
Sure.
When you remember Mickey Mouse, what comes to mind? There is black, there is the white glove, there is a red something here.
The ears.
And the ears. Sawa? And I wanted to tie that with the Mark Mende story, so that we don't feel that boy tu ni boy wa maju, boy ji stories zetu za Kenya. I want to tie us that because there is a point we are missing. And that's why I wanted to say that even as we throw a name like Papa Shirandula, yes, what comes to mind? There is that image, yes? But what can be reinforced that we can say, this is a Papa Shirandula trademark? Sawa? Do we have a Papa, like a Mark Mende trademark? The hair. Sawa? Exactly. Is it reinforced? That's what I'm asking. Mm-hmm. So whatever they are doing it accidentally, not on purpose. Yeah. So in this conversation, we want to ask, what things can we do as creators on purpose to grow? When they are talking about Mickey Mouse, kwanza it was started by yellow, and then wakaenda condense to black, white, and red, and then the ears. That is done on purpose. When you talk of James Bond, the greeting is on purpose. Hi, my name is Bond, James Bond. That one is in all the bond. Actually, that's the bond trademark. Kindly, please.
Yes. What we also need to know that trademark is talking about the different rights. You can also protect your character through trademark law, again away from copyright law. You can also protect it from public performance. You can also protect it at unfair competition. There are so many protections you can use to protect the character. The question he's asking, and maybe that's what our local market is probably not investing as much on, is how much are you willing to invest into that character, and to what length do you want to go? Do you want to actually just build that character, make sure the character is built, make sure you have done all the necessary protections in the sense of the requisite protections are there, so that when you put money and investment and resources into that character, you're sure your returns will be there. And just like they protected Mickey Mouse on the other side, you can protect your fictional character or graphical character. So there's also a question of sitting down and having a strategic approach on how you're going to protect your character, how you're going to build your character, how you're going to invest into that character, and also recalling that that character is different. The rights on the character are different from the film that you produce. They are different, and one could actually, the character can sue and the film is not suing. So these are some of the questions I would want them to think about. Thank you
very much. Now, you lovely lawyers, anyone with something before I take it to the gallery?
Okay, maybe before we go to the audience, I think what is coming out clearly is the fact that in our script writing, we don't think through the characters well, and what areas we can exploit in terms of identity of these characters. What marks do we want to have an impact out there, so that we can use this as a trademark, or we can use, someone can identify with this person, with this character, with the Mark Mende or whatever. There's just a lack of that purpose, the intention, and I don't know if it's accidental or if it's because people are not aware, or I wouldn't know. Maybe we can get, when we get to the plenary session, we'll also get the feel of the audience on that.
Thank you very much.
Maybe just to add, I mean, I want to, I think a few people have done it, and I think every time we speak about audio or visual works within the creative sector. I've had clients, for example, who are developing comic books, for example, and they've protected the characters. They've also protected the script. They've also trademarked the name of the characters. And as Alex is saying, I think another way of phrasing it is you can have a character appear in somebody else's film as opposed to only in your particular, let me not even call it a film, your work product. And I think it's understanding that within the one, we may look at a film as one thing, but we're saying from an IP point of view, you can break it down into several things that each could then have their own IP protection, or the ability for you to exploit and monetize, which is the hallelujah word we all like. Here is money. How else can you make money from the thing you have created? I think the other thing that we may also want to consider a bit more that keeps coming up, and recently the whole Hakuna Matata story became, really it's about merchandising. I mean, I think Hakuna Matata is still the Swahili language's property, for lack of a better way of describing it. But the thing that was protected in the 90s and renewed recently was the branding around the Hakuna Matata logo for purposes of merchandising, so that kids could have t-shirts and lunch boxes and caps and things that made them remember the cartoon movie called Lion King. So I think in terms of looking at the entire spectrum, characters can generate revenue for you in various ways, and I support the statement about maybe being more intentional about creating it. And I think it's the perception of this can be its own thing, and can bring me another stream of revenue, but just also be part of this. So I think a few people have done it that I can testify to, but we could definitely have more people. Yeah.
Very brief, and then nitenda kwa audience.
I totally agree with that, and I want to now challenge then the local filmmakers to also look at things like Ben 10, even if they are series. You go to the supermarket, you find kids are harassing you to buy things of Ben 10. So part of the ways of reinforcing this character is the merchandise. is what she has said about merchandise. I don't think there's a Papa Shirando or a cup or a mat or something in any supermarket. But imagine that such a thing happened. It's a different revenue stream, and it's also built on the character, because I think we're looking at the marketing and how you can create these. So even investment in that character and the merchandise, which is also trademarked, again, under different law for the character, I thought you should share about that.
Thank you very much. When you go to the beverage section and you come across color red, what comes to mind? Pardon? Coca-Cola. Sawa? Ukienda kwa the mobile telephony market space and you come across green, what comes to mind? Pardon? When they are making reference of a trademark, that is what it simply means. A trademark is anything that indicates or distinguishes another product or another service at the marketplace. And unaona ile kitu huko hivyo? Pardon? Oh. Unaona ile kitu huko hivyo? Machismo. Yes? It has the same potential with what I mentioned about aka kakitu, Mickey Mouse. 3 questions, please. Any question? 3, 4, 5 questions. Yes, ma'am. Naomba mic tafadhali. Naomba utasema tu, hi, my name is, for the interest of.
Hi, my name is Joyce. My question is, as an actor or as a performer, can you own the character, or does a character belong to the producer, or can you own a part of it, especially if you have obviously added a whole lot of value, and can you then now start to use that? I'll give you an example. For example, DJ Shiti. Does DJ Shiti belong to the producer, the character, or does it belong to the actor? I don't even know his real name. And is it in order then to use that for commercial purposes, to run with that as an actor? Number 2, maybe just not very related, but just somewhat. How do you quantify your intellectual property? How do you quantify your idea and your script? For example, if you're, say, budgeting or valuing your film, you know how to quantify the camera, you know how to, this much goes to the sound. How on earth do you quantify intellectual property? How do you say it's worth $1 million or 3 million?
Thank you very much, Joyce. Another question?
Thank you very much. My name is Robert. My question is addressed to June. As a TV producer, most of the things that we grapple with is basically IP. And a lot of producers, will tell you they don't even understand the number of IPs that you can actually register for a particular work that you are doing. And I think this is a fantastic discussion just to open up and even, give ideas in regards to how many sort of regulations and copyrights that you can actually subject to one literal type of work. And, the budgets that are involved and even the processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Swali nyingine, nilikuwa nimesema 3 questions. Okay. Thank you. Kuna question nyingine? Yes.
If you come up with something.
Your name and you.
So sorry.
Please be upstanding.
Hi everyone,
Hey.
My name is Gladwell. I wanted to ask, if you do come up with an idea and see it elsewhere, do you still have the rights to protect that idea?
Thank you, Gladwell. Okay. The last one? Okay. Thank you very much. And Joyce has brought 2 questions. And I don't know if I volunteer you or you can just... Okay, all of you. Alex.
Joyce, thank you very much for that question. Only yesterday, we met the Parliamentary Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation, at an event where they had called several of us to go and talk about Kenya's ratification of the Beijing Treaty on the rights of performers. Kenya is about to accede to that one, and then it will probably be the 28th country in the world. This is where it gives specific rights to performers. Again, when you look at the character we are talking about, these rights go hand in hand. They reinforce the rights of the performer. So there are certain rights that are granted under that treaty which are different from the production. So the same thing happens when you talk of the rights of you as an actor in the film, that the rights are actually different from the production, as we said. In the interest of time, I just want you to go and check the Rocky. There is a case you will see, a Rocky series. You know where there was Stallone, Sylvester Stallone, 1982, and how he was to sue because of his character, and the studio wasn't suing, and then he changed his mind, and then later on they brought the other one. There's a whole story about that, which actually shows you how the rights of the performer, the rights of the character are totally different than the rights of the studio or the producer. In terms of quantifying IP on your script, I think this has to be a very, very, very personal question, because you have to look at the investment. We spoke about a lot of investment. If you have invested a lot, you look at what you have invested. Some of it could be emotional investment, it could be financial, it could be resource, it could be in kind, it could be all manner of investment, because there are not two things that are ever equal. So that is something that as a business person you must always sit down, but you can get help from some of the councils to probably tell you what are the going rates. But one of the biggest problems we have in this part of the world is really underrating ourselves and selling ourselves cheap and shooting ourselves in the foot. So one of the clauses we are asking the legislators to have in the law is a clause that protects actors against themselves or performers, because they need to be protected from themselves. You know, selling their rights away in perpetuity, forever, everywhere in the world, and for just a small amount. So before you make that commitment, do take some equivalent. I would just say one small thing, because June is the one supposed to respond to number 2. So the gentleman, I would ask you to just look at this website, www.copyx.org/lectures, and go through all those free lectures, and you'll learn quite a bit about what June is going to tell you, a lot more in depth. Finally, Gladwell, you have an idea, you see it elsewhere. First of all, it's your idea. If your idea, you have expressed it, that's when it becomes something that's copyrightable. If it's an idea, it's an idea. Like the moderator said, you can't have something to do with, although he gave a different example, you cannot have copyright on crime. So when it's adultery, even if it's how creative, first of all, you can't have copyright on that. But in any matter, so if yours is not criminal and you express it and you see it elsewhere, there are possibility that is not exactly the same. All right? Like we said, even if you pick Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare borrowed heavily. Look at the story of Shakespeare. It's not all that original. You know, that raises also another contrarian question to the whole idea of intellectual property. As we keep talking of how you're protecting your creative, innovative work, please remember, everything you own and whatever you combine to come up with a new one, you learned all of it. That's why all IPs, after a certain amount of time, must revert to the public. Life plus 50, if it's they have different times. And so it's because of the understanding that at the end of the day, this IP must help society. So whatever you pick, if you do some creative work, like I said about the national anthem, why not? But the beat that you did in your unique way. So even the other people who have done it, don't give up and say, oh, they have stolen my plot. You can still have right to yours. And so let the best win out there, because each is unique in its own right, so long as they're unique, not copies from the other one. I think that's what I could say, and thank you.
Okay, I'd love to touch on 2 questions that were asked. There's a question that was asked on the character owning the copyright, or how do you go about it? So this has a lot of dynamics. It will now depend on what you as the character go and agree with the production company or whoever you're signing up with the contract. So what I can advise, just you need to at least be aware of your rights. And when you're framing that agreement, how are you framing it? Are you granting the producer the right to owning that particular character. If that's the case, then you wouldn't have the claim. So it's just a matter of being knowledgeable and also ensuring that you're cautious when drafting your agreements. And then I'd also like to touch on the question that Gladwell asked, and just briefly say that an idea itself, it's not enough to amount to a copyright. It has to be in a tangible format and fixated, as she rightfully put it, so that if it's not fixated anywhere, there's no way I can come and say, someone copied my idea, this was my idea, but then you have nothing to show for it. So unless it's in a tangible format, then it's not. But then you ensure that you have the backing by going to Kekobo, registering your copyright, so that you can be able to enforce that. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to add that. The only other thing I'll say is for you to prove infringement, you need to prove that the other party had access, because it's possible for the same idea to be had by many people at the very same time, but then you still fixate it or put it down in a tangible format in different ways. Vampire Diaries and Twilight are just stories about vampires. It's not anything unique. It's quite generic, but neither can claim the other stole because they fixated it in a very, very different way. So just if there's nothing else you take from today, ideas are not protected under copyright. Fixated expressions of those ideas are. Okay? I think the other thing I'll add maybe to Joyce's question is that a lot of what you're asking is after the fact, unfortunately, because, we have a lot of wonderful actors who bring their all to a particular character. If I tell you Cookie Lion, you don't even think of the original author's name. You know who Cookie is. Even if she's in another movie, you'll be like, that's Cookie Lion, because of how much she brought to her character, for example. If you think of Jackie Nyaminde, there's a character you associate Jackie with. And my point is that happened after. And I guess what we're saying in terms of contractual, sound contractual drafting is make a provision, because it could happen. And once money is flowing, it's very difficult to say, can we sit down? Because that 30K you gave me for the day, it was okay, but my character has become a thing of its own. So what we learn every day, even as practitioners, is that we don't know everything, number one, but we rely on your good and bad experiences to come back to us and say, what can we do to enhance the next contract I sign? It's not about filing suit, because we also have to ask yourself, is it worthwhile to spend your time and your money that way? But learn the lesson, which is, it is very possible for an actor to help develop and create a character to a point where it becomes its own unique thing, and then therefore the next contracts you sign, when you're reviewing them, these are some of the clauses you will request be added before you sign the final contract. In terms of IP valuation, very quickly, yes, your investment, there are formats and formulas out there about how different organizations value their IP. A lot of it is how we feel, to be honest, as creatives. We are cast in a good way, that we feel a lot of things, and our emotions help us create beautiful art. But it also diminishes our ability to look at the business side of things. So one of the platforms I would recommend is Prospect IP Africa. They have a service where you can ask them to come in. I think it costs $400 or something like that, but they can give you a report if you open up your books, because that's the other thing we're not very willing to do sometimes. And our valuation is a component of not just actual tangible things we can see being valued, like in your case you mentioned cameras and things like that, but even your hourly rate. What's Joyce's hourly rate? You should have one. You should have one that if I'm going to move from my office to come to you, there's a rate I am applying to my time. And then there's a rate I will apply to my time on a set because of my acting background and my expertise. Like I could say it's $1 million bob for me because me, I think I'm awesome. But it's a very emotional evaluation that I have done. So there are formulas out there. We're not yet where we need to be in Kenya, to be honest, but conversations are happening. But we need to do it in partnership because we need access to your numbers to be able to give you some answers. Finally, Robert, yes, it's true. There are very many forms of IP that could be generated even just from one work. I mean, I can take you through one process just to give an example, because there are several in various ones. So I'll give you. Can I give you a music one, or do you want an audiovisual one? Do you mind? Okay, so when I'm writing a song, I will take a piece of paper and write lyrics that come to mind, okay? That piece of paper is now a product of my intellectual property exercise, and I can go and register it as a literary work. I've not sung, I've not opened my mouth, I've not entered a studio, I've not recorded anything, okay? So it's almost what we call a layered approach before you even get to the final thing. So whether it's lyrics, the title of the song, phrases, like actual phrases, verse 1, the chorus, because if I say, I love you, there are a million other songs. I can't claim I love you. But if I even make a new word, my word, I've made it in my own music, I've created my own terminology. It's a Junism, for example, right? Bazokizo or Tokelezea. Those things became even more prominent than the actual song itself, which then tells you can then take that aspect or that title and make it a trademark, because we've seen banks use people's song titles or lines in their chorus for campaigns. Yeah, we've seen Bambika, we've seen Banko Tuch being used, isn't it? That tells you there's an element of trademark that you can then go ahead and register and exploit separately from this piece of paper that is still just a literary work. So I would go to the copyright board and say, I'm not even sure I have the money to record, but in the meantime, can you protect the lyrics to the 12 songs in my album? And then I'll find money, I'll go into a studio and I'll say, I would like to record. The studio owner will ask me, are you financing this project or not? And I will say, hopefully, yes, I do have some money and I want to own my master. Why is that phrase important? Because if you do not pay the record producer, studio owner person, the law allows them to own your master. So if you pay and get a receipt that does not say alingia tu hapa and amelipa stima na amelipa water and use the toilet 4 times, whatever, like you actually have a receipt that says transfer of ownership is back to you. You now own your literary work and your sound recording, which is your master. You take that back to the copyright board and you now apply for registration of the sound recording. You now have 2 rights. Assuming you did the trademark, you have 3, okay? And so each of these particular aspects of your song, the final part is the musicality or the musical instrumentation or composition, because not everybody plays an instrument, like I don't. So maybe I have words, but I don't have those musical notations, like it will be in the key of F major 7 and then it will go to C and then G. The guy who does that is called a composer, and composers have their own right separate from authors' rights. So by the time I'm done with my album, I probably have 5 to 6 rights that have been triggered, maybe not all owned by me. The way I can ensure I own or control the economic exploitation of them is by paying everybody off. But we live in a world where things are really expensive, especially people's time at $1 million bob an hour, like June. So you can't afford me, but we